I think it was around 1952.
And that was when you first came to McKendree?
Yes.
Yeah. And what was the area, what was it like? What was the building like?
There was only like 2 houses within sight of the church at that time.
Okay, and what about the building, and what about like...
The building was just a box-like building sitting up on the hill. And I remember that it was cold. It had a big heater trying to warm it up, and if it didn't get very warm, everybody just sat around the heater.
Now, what about the roads in the area?
The roads not paved. Lawrenceville, Swanee, Russell Road, or none of the roads were paved.
And how were y'all getting to church at that point?
We could drive to church, but very slippery. You could not drive on the other roads, hardly. And Russell Road was impassable a lot of times.
Really? Wow. So the worship service at that time, what do you remember about the worship service?
I remember that at that time, when I first started going there was no service every Sunday. We had 5 churches on the charge.
So what was service like at that time?
Service was good once we got people there, and we had to keep up with the schedule because we didn't have church every Sunday. We had Sunday school every Sunday.
And so y'all didn't have church every Sunday. Was there certain times of the day that would have church and not have church?
Well, we had to share with other churches, so we didn't have it in the morning. Sometimes we had a 10 o'clock service, some 11 o'clock, some in the afternoon.
Okay, so there was one pastor for multiple services.
Right.
Multiple churches. Wow, okay. So as the area grew, did you get one pastor that was just for your church? And like, how did things change then?
Things were changing every day. People were coming and leaving. And so we said we have to have help, and the conference helped us by giving us our very own preacher.
Okay.
And we started growing from there as the neighborhood did grow.
And that was with the first church that's up on the hill that you guys would call the chapel now.
Yeah.
So who was the first preacher there that the conference sent you?
Dan Brown.
Dan Brown, okay. And then when was the church built out? When did you guys make the decision to expand outside the chapel and build the new church?
Well, he was there.
Okay.
We built our first phase while he was there. Everybody worked very hard.
And how many people would you say when Dan came, how many people would you say were attending every Sunday?
30, 40, but we're so proud when we got to 100.
Really? Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's great. Well, it's come a long way. It's come a long way.
Come a long way.
Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I will say that there were Sunday school rooms attached to the old church ever since I remember. And I do remember, the first thing I remember is an outhouse. And the outhouse was there until about 1972. So fellowship meals were buffet style through the Sunday school rooms in the back of the church on cold days. You entered in one door and came out the other and ate in the sanctuary at chairs or buffet, the benches or whatever. And then on warm days, we had dinner on the grounds, which would be at the concrete slab tables outside between several trees. And I do remember Dad always got there early because Miss Polly and Miss Lucille made the best fried apple pies, and he wanted to make sure he got his share. But I was also there in 5th grade. We had Sunday school, and I remember that I met my first boyfriend. He lived across the street. He kept sneaking up to the window at 5th grade. So that got me going there. So anyhow, kept going, and we had a pastor by the name of Ron Barham. He was great. He really started the youth group. And we met at McKendree, we met at Rock Springs, we met at Martin's Chapel, sometimes at First Methodist downtown. But our youth group numbered about 20 or 30 kids at the time. And he took us on the Appalachian Trail, he took us to the lake, he had a youth group going. He also brought the lay witness mission to McKendree. At that time I was about 16. The lay witness missionaries came, and about 12 of us joined the church at that time. A couple of people wanted to be baptized in the river, so we took them down to the river, and they were baptized there. The lay witness missions was the big thing. When I graduated in 1971 and went away to college, is when they built the fellowship hall, and we actually had bathrooms and a kitchen. That was nice, because when we got married in 1978, the outhouse was still there, but not functioning. But we had to be very careful taking pictures because it was outside the realm of the photographer's shot. which was kind of funny. And then when Natalie was born in 82, we moved in 83 to Nashville, Tennessee. Dee, Shelnut, and Candy were there, and they were the youngest pastors we'd had in a while. And the day that we left is the day that they were reassigned to another church. And we came back in 1984, and that's when we began the new church development with Dan Brown.
I'm Tom Johnston. You just heard from my wife, Gail. She mentioned us being gone for a while. We were gone away to school from 83, 84. While we were gone, the conference had talked about building a new church nearby, a new Methodist church. Our church said, what about us? And they all got together and they started a new program, taking an old church and putting it under new church development. That's when they sent us Dan Brown. That was a real time for growing. And Dan Brown had us literally going on, after Sunday services, we would go to knock on doors in neighborhoods all around the area. We canvassed the areas to invite people to come to church. Also during that time, we all gathered around and prayed about getting a loan to buy the land where the church is now sitting. And the Methodist Conference helped us to get the loan to buy that land, and then of course to build a building. And we really started growing. That was about before 1990, but coming up in around 1990. And that was a real growing time for McKendree. And then after that, Steve Dodson came in and we built the sanctuary, and we've been growing, growing pretty strong ever since then.